This report basically states that even when these illnesses do not cause death, they are the largest and most rapidly growing cause of disability and lost human potential and productivity across the lifespan.
The first strategy we're going to unpack is about fostering a supportive classroom environment, fostering a supportive learning environment. We do it through our practice. We do it through fostering inclusivity, both through our language and setting up our space so everyone feels safe and encouraged.
40% of diseases across the world in young people are something to do with mental health related. Only 2% of the Global Health Fund or budgets are directed towards mental health.
Podclass acknowledges the true and traditional custodians of the land we meet on here today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to elders past and present and are grateful to be on this country.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you
when the students start to riot.
I'll be here for you
even if your coffee's gone cold.
I'll be here for you 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello friends, welcome back to Podclass, and this is the one on youth mental health. My name is Will and I'm the CEO of Youth Leadership Academy Australia, and I'm joined by my two friends, Skye and Amanda.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Here we are.
We are the co-founders of Youth Engagement Project. It is so nice to be back with you.
It is a pleasure and a privilege to be in your eyes, in your ears, and on your eyes today. Wow. We are doing well.
So what a surprise, we're talking about youth mental health. Seems like a bit of a big issue.
It is. And it's such a big topic. And we were just talking between us before we started that we're probably going to break this even into 2 episodes just because there's so much to unpack here. Mm-hmm. And really this is coming off the back of one of the big reports that's just come out. We know that the Lancet Psychiatry Commission on Youth Mental Health has just been released. So that was led by Origin, who's one of the leaders in the Australian youth mental health space. And there was a lot in this report. And I just want to start by saying I don't think any of us were really surprised by a lot of the findings. Yeah. I think that just anecdotally and from the work that we do every day with young people, we were kind of expecting these numbers and it really paints a really big picture globally about what's happening with our young people.
And look, some of the statistics we're going to be unpacking today, and we're going to be looking a little at, I guess, how those statistics have been derived, because it is quite thorough, this research, but also looking at what we can do, because if you're anything like the three of us, we just sat here having a conversation and our big question was like, well, this is so huge and, so overwhelming, at the core of it, really overwhelming, not necessarily surprising. But the fact is we are committed in this space. We are committed to our young people. We are committed to making a difference. We are not health professionals. However, we work with our young people day in, day out, in classrooms, in programs, wherever it is that we are placed. And so what can we do? How can we support? How can we, not add to our workload, but fine-tune our current practice to nurture the mental health of our young people, because we need to work together on this.
Yeah. And then we can't just, whilst it would be lovely if everyone else just did their part, we can't rely on that. We know that 40% of mental health illnesses, 40% of diseases across the world in young people are something to do with mental health related. Yeah. Only 2% of the Global Health Fund or budgets are directed towards mental health.
Yeah. Which is just wild. And I think anecdotally, when I think about my experience working in schools and young people who do seek support for their ill health when that comes up, it can be really challenging, both from a school perspective and teacher support, but also from a parental or caregiver perspective, because of the demand on the system in terms of wait lists and being able to get in, and that's really challenging. So I guess the purpose of this is to say that we might identify that there's maybe a student or a young person that's in our care and they may need some additional support, and we can absolutely get those channels and those support things started. But that it might be 3 months, 6 months, 2 years before they actually are in that system and receiving that really hands-on support. So in the meantime, that doesn't just mean like, oh, well, they're getting this, they'll get there eventually. Yeah. But what can we do that's really practical right now in our classroom spaces to help support what we are calling mental wealth or, really great mental health for our young people and building that up. So what can we do there?
And I think as well, through acknowledging that there are little things we can implement and little elements of our practice we can shift, what we can do is, possibly maybe reduce the acuteness of the situation to be more of, like early intervention. Yeah. These are all early intervention strategies that we're discussing here. They are not professional health strategies. They sit in the early intervention space. And regardless of whether we have identified a young person as maybe, having real challenges with their mental health or mental ill health, we can implement these as early intervention for all young people.
Yeah, 100%.
And for us as well, like as educators, people who work with young people, it's so important that we're role modelling what that looks like in terms of support-seeking behaviours, being able to identify how we're feeling and talk about it. And I'd really like to, I'm going to read this because I think it's important to get right. But in the report, so this report basically calls for existing evidence-based solutions that need to be scaled up. And it states that even when these illnesses do not cause death, they are the largest and most rapidly growing cause of disability and lost human potential and productivity across the lifespan.
Can we just
so crazy.
Can you just reread that last sentence? Disability.
It is the most rapidly growing cause of disability and lost human potential and productivity across the lifespan.
I mean, we operate as teachers, as people who work with young people across Australia and the world. I believe and I really connect to the idea that we operate in the space of human potential.
100%.
We operate in the space of allowing, opening space for young people to show up and explore their own potential through learning and growth every day. Yeah. And to know that, that is being
the biggest barrier for them is their mental health.
Yeah.
And I suppose, so what it kind of looks at, the publication kind of goes into mega trends or the things that are like what's causing.
And this is probably the point of difference from every other report that tells us things we already know.
It does.
And I think also the global nature of it as well.
Yeah, and the fact that it was exactly right. It's global. There's like 10 youth commissioners that were part of it from like
Canada,
Australia
Morocco,
and Zambia and a whole bunch of places. So that's really important. But some of these mega trends in terms of the rise of mental ill health and where that's coming from for our youth are things like intergenerational equity. Climate change, the fact that we have social media that's unregulated. We're talking about insecurity in terms of employment. We're talking about academic pressures.
Yes.
These are these mega trends.
Validating.
I don't know for anyone, like I'm feeling a pressure. Like I feel these things so deeply every day. And, we are not in the shoes of our teenagers and our young people, but I can't imagine as someone who, has a bit of life experience, has given things a go, has failed, has succeeded, has whatever throughout like my life, like I'm feeling the pressure in my chest, at that list of things. Like, and it's a lot.
Well, you actually fit into the category that's looked at. So,
and all I've been asking for so many years is a little bit of compassion for the crises that young people are growing up in. We know it, like climate crisis, cost of living crisis. There's like COVID. There's so many different things that we're growing up with that are different challenges that we've never experienced before. And if we're not approaching them with different solutions to previously, we will have the same outcome.
Yep, exactly right. So we know that this report kind of states that mental illnesses, they kind of are peaking at around the age of 15 years of age, and that 63 to 70, isn't it? 15 just feels like.
But that means they're peaking, right? And we know that also means from a lot younger than that starting.
It's a peak onset.
Yeah.
So we know that's when like this is onsetting. And then 63 to 75% of onsets are occurring occurring by age of 25. So this is really that demographic, that bracket that they're looking at in terms of youth and monitoring these trends in ill mental health. So we know there's an urgent call. We know that action needs to be
taken. We're not telling you anything new that you don't know either.
We're not telling you anything new in that department. We're all aware of this. So, and like you were saying just before, it can feel really overwhelming when we hear this stuff, we read this stuff and I think it's important to look at what actually is within our circle of control as educators. What are the things that we can do to help have a positive influence on the students and young people in our classrooms, and knowing that it actually is contributing in a positive way to the bigger picture here that's finding solutions to support this generation.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive in, and what we would like to share is a few strategies that we can implement. And as we shared, this isn't a workload piece. This is tweaks, and it's just, we were really cognizant of the fact that this is a big topic right now, and we don't want to amplify the pressure of this topic. Our intention with going through this is it's on our hearts, it's on our minds. So let's have a chat about what we can do about it. And so the first strategy we're going to unpack is, oh my gosh, and we know this. And for so many of us, all it is a reminder that what we are doing is right in this space. So the first strategy is about fostering a supportive classroom environment, fostering a supportive learning environment. And we do this through a number of things. We do it through our practice. We do it through fostering inclusivity, both through our language and setting up our space so everyone feels, safe and encouraged to share where they're at and to share what's going on for them, and that they feel seen for who they are. And, on this note, we so deeply we know that educators across this country are doing everything they can to nurture environments just like this. And if you are listening and you're thinking, oh my gosh, yes, that's what I do, well, then you're supporting a positive environment for mental health. And I think there's a few other factors to this strategy as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's like the relationship piece that we've spoken about in every single episode just about before this is how we foster that open and supportive classroom.
Absolutely. And open, I think, we talk about open, I think open communication as well. And, we spoke about in our behaviour management episode that when behaviours occur, doing our absolute best to never make the young person wrong, but separate the young person from the behaviour. And that fosters open communication. We all have our moments. We all have our flare-ups. We all have our, elevated states at times, and it's not making those wrong. In fact, it's nurturing the fact that it is normal, and then it's about, well, where do we go from here with those choices that were just made?
Yeah, I love that. We know
foster
how to
a supportive classroom environment.
It's like teaching 101. I feel like everyone listening is like, yes, tick, that's great. Well, that's awesome, because you're already well and truly on the pathway to supporting young people's mental wealth in your classroom.
I like this. Point number 2, Skye, give it to us.
Point number 2 is all about incorporating where we can social and emotional learning. And we know that this is part of our curriculum. We know that we have to deliver particular lessons around effective communication and respectful relationships. And
probably
all
my
those
favourite
kind of
part
things.
of the curriculum.
But I think that this is really about going beyond that, but it's finding the teachable moments within your classroom. I know that so often things happen like little relationships or conversations between students, and it's such a great opportunity for us as teachers to push pause on the curriculum that we're teaching and really draw attention and focus to when that does occur, because that's real life examples, that's real life relationships that are being modeled, showing what it looks like to be someone who has that social and emotional capacity to have empathy or compassion or be a leader or listen really well to their peers, like all of these things that we can teach and call out in the moment as we see it.
And I feel like so often, there's lots of labels, and we unpack lots of different things in social and emotional learning, but I feel like at the core of it, what it is it's bringing us to presence. It's bringing us to being present in this moment, present with who we're with, present with what we're doing, and present with our body and our being. And that can happen at any point. And maybe it's just, it could be practices you already do in your classroom. It could be implementing some simple breathing, breathing in nice and slowly for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, and exhaling for 4 seconds. And doing that with our class just to recalibrate. That is never wasted time. That is invested time. It is invested time in the regulation of the class.
And what you're doing even just there, like you're breathing and we're sitting in a podcast studio and I'm like, yeah, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out with you. And that's such a beautiful example of co-regulation and how that can begin to take place just by us modelling that as educators in this space. We're inviting our young people on that journey to regulate as well.
And I also believe it's in them moments that we like take them from a human doing, as you say, to like that human being element, and we give them the skills to be able to cope with relationships, to be able to cope with the bouncing back in negative moments. Which brings us to point number 3.
Number 3.
Just to recap, point number 2 was incorporating social emotional learning, which we do, and this can be done in small moments, in simple moments, throughout our practice, and probably already is done.
Yeah.
Number 3.
So number 3 is all about, as educators, being able to recognise those really early signs that something could be not quite right with our young people in regards to their mental health.
And I feel like before we delve into this, let's just acknowledge that could feel like a lot of pressure. However, outside of parents, what are the facts? The facts are that we're probably spending as much time with these young people, if not more, than parents.
And if you're a tech-free school, you are definitely spending more time presently with the young people in the classroom than at home.
So we are well positioned to notice changes in mental health.
And we would love to talk about this on a later episode, but that idea of really we become a team as the educator. We should be a team with the parent, with the caregiver at home. We both want the same outcomes for that student in our classrooms. We both want them to be regulated and supported and have a sense of success and belonging and all of those things. But we can provide as educators really important feedback and really important data on that young person, because we get to see them in context that their parents don't get to see. We get to see them in relationships and in classroom settings and excursions and all of those spaces where we really get to know their personalities. And, you know, I've said teaching 101 a few times, but teaching 101, like, know your students and how they learn. Like, knowing our students is really the first part of this, because when we know our students, we know what their norm is. And so when things aren't quite right, it becomes really easy for us to pick up on those cues. And it might be just little things like, you know, behavioural change, or they're a bit down in the dumps more than normal, or they're maybe suddenly arriving. You go.
Yeah, rocking up late, or how they're showing up academically could really shift something.
Can I add, also though, when do not expect you to have a big flip chart in your room. It's like, Jerry's mental health today was a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like some of you have like 150 students, right?
No, and sometimes it is. It's just like you might just have an intuitive kind of gut instinct. Like you've checked in with a student, you're like, oh, good morning, Jerry, because we're using Jerry. Good morning, Jerry. Like, you know,
I was going to say, not Jerry Seinfeld, Jerry the student.
How was your weekend? Whatever it might be. And normally they're a really chipper, upbeat kind of student, and they just were a bit flat in your response. And you might go, I might just file that away for later. And then the next day you see them and it's the same kind of interaction, because everyone has days where we're off. Like we all have days where we're off. But when we're looking at, mental ill health and this becoming like an onset of mental ill health, we want to really monitor that across an extended period of time as well. And that early intervention is all about checking in when we first begin to notice these
And really
things.
naturally, it's not like, what's going on? You can just simply be like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to assume that something's wrong.
Yeah.
And if you do make that assumption that something's wrong, they're often going to be like, maybe get a little bit defensive because they haven't made the choice to come to you yet.
Yeah, it's like removing that autonomy piece, right?
And how we check in.
No one likes being told what to do.
So number 3 is recognizing those early signs of potentially mental ill health through our practice. Number 4 is promoting a balanced approach to academic pressure.
Big one.
Taking notes as well, because we're all so good at balance around this table.
Yes, we are so excellent at balance.
Which probably brings it to like the best thing that you can do as a teacher is to find that balance yourself.
Absolutely.
Which we know it's bold of us to say, but it's very similarly to us. We work hard, but we also are trying really hard to find that balance each and every day. It's about that trying piece, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's also acknowledging, like, we can't say to students, oh, your academics aren't as important as, X or whatever it might be, because we don't understand maybe the home environment, the pressure they put on themselves, all those kind of things.
And also what they value, what you value, completely
can be different. But modeling, that's really important. But I think it coincides with making sure that when when we know that academic pressure is something that exists for our students in our classroom or in our school settings, and different schools have different cultures around academic expectations as well, being able to teach like stress management techniques and those regulation techniques alongside when we know that academic pressure will be present is incredibly important. Because we just can't say to someone, oh, it doesn't matter, you're clearly getting too stressed about, your upcoming test or whatever it might be. And that, that's triggering. So if it's important, if it's a 10 out of 10 for that student, then we've got to treat it like it's a 10 out of 10. Like that's important for them. So instead we can support and go, we're aware that this is maybe a really stressful time. So what is it that we can do to support? Or let's go through this strategy that you might be able to use to help support that.
And really realistic expectations, because it's like, I think we spoke about that a few episodes ago, that optimal challenge piece. It can't be too hard for them. It can't be too much of an impact on their environment. Like for me, I was super stressed earlier this year, and I shared with both of you. I'd walk around the lake, I'd put my headphones in, I'd listen to a not very young lady say, feel your toes. And it just like was that literally a 1% shift that I needed to make.
Which sometimes it's all it is. It's all it is, and a reminder that we have that's within our control to make those 1% shifts.
So I think, when we think about academic pressures, like given our education system, given standardized testing and reporting and the pressures that are on all of us educators, but also like, okay, academic pressures are present, fact.
Yes, fact.
How we can address those and how we can nurture our students for how they respond to those pressures, but also how they are primed for stress management techniques is how we can support. And also sometimes it's just as simple as calling it out. Team, I just want to acknowledge it's a big week.
Yeah.
And there is a lot on this week. And
if this is the way you're feeling, then that is completely normal. It's expected.
Okay. And if you would like an extra coping strategy, or does anyone need to do some breathing actually before we jump right in today? Or whatever it is, sometimes just calling it out like that is so nurturing.
Which can be quite difficult as well if you as a teacher are under the KPI of an academic measure as well. And if the students know that, and if the students know that and know that your school is making choices in order to get higher up on that rank, it will cause some serious backlash, I think, as a young person who's experienced that. It's like, I don't want to be a part of that. I resent it.
And then the flip side of that is that we know as educators that if a young person in our classroom is in an activated state, there's very likely that there's little learning happening or taking place, because we can't learn and digest and apply and practice new information in that state.
And also, if we are in an activated state, we are absolutely not in an optimal teaching state. And so it's true on both sides.
Yeah.
So I feel like
awareness.
We have already covered so much.
We're going to have to.
So
we promise you short, sharp episodes, so we're going to have to come back to.
So the first kind of strategy or tool that we looked at that we can do is just fostering that really safe, inclusive, supportive environment. Number two, we looked at incorporating social emotional learning through our practice and naming and being present in times and bringing in strategies to support presence. Number 3 was all about being able to recognize some of those early signs perhaps of mental ill health coming up for our students and our young people. And our last one, Will Masara,
promote a balanced approach, even if that counterbalance has to come in a bit too.
We are going to be back in your ears very soon with part 2. There's been a lot to unpack in this episode. Thanks as always for joining us, and we will see you again.
See you in part 2.
Before we go, you're doing a wonderful job.
Important to note. Very important.
The stats are full on. You're doing a wonderful job and your young people need you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.